When you hear the word dinosaur, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A ferocious carnivore like Tyrannosaurus rex? Maybe a fearsome aquatic monster like Mosasaurus? Or perhaps a flying reptile like Pteranodon? Well, if you thought of a massive plant-eating giant, then you're right on the money, because today we're talking about herbivores. What were the largest herbivores in the entire Mesozoic? If you're ready to learn all about these prehistoric plant-eaters, then let's get to it. Dinosaurs are divided into two main categories: carnivores and herbivores. The former are the meat-eaters, while the latter are the plant-eaters. Most of us probably know some famous herbivore species off the top of our heads, like Triceratops, Stegosaurus, and of course, the mighty Brachiosaurus. But which were the absolute biggest herbivores during the age of dinosaurs? Let's find out. But first, before we dive into this topic, don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below, so you can stay up to date with all of our new videos. And while you're at it, why not hit the like button too? Thank you in advance if you do. Now, let's begin. The Jurassic period is largely known as the time of the sauropods. These long-necked dinosaurs truly dominated this era, and there were many gigantic species to choose from. One of the tallest dinosaurs that ever lived was Brachiosaurus. This massive herbivore was an early sauropod that lived during the late Jurassic in what is now North America. It had a very distinctive long neck and small head and was about 18 meters tall. Its name means arm lizard in Greek, referring to the supposed length of its forelimbs. However, recent studies have shown that Brachiosaurus actually had relatively short arms compared to the rest of its body. There are 4 known species of this genus: Brachiosaurus altithoras, Brachiosaurus, Branchiexcellens, and Brachiosaurus. Sauropods typically had very slender bodies with long tails and small heads. They were well adapted for their herbivorous lifestyle and used their long necks to reach high plants that no other herbivore could access. Their small heads also saved them weight, making it easier to move around. Sauropods were the longest dinosaurs that ever existed, and one of the longest of them all was Diplodocus. This herbivore lived during the late Jurassic in what is now North America. It had a very long tail that resembled a whip, measuring about 2.7 meters in length. Overall, this dinosaur was about 26 meters long and weighed 6.5 tons. Like other sauropods, Diplodocus had a long neck that it used to reach high plants. However, unlike most of its relatives, it had very thick ribs that gave its body a barrel-like appearance. The exact number of its vertebrae is unknown, but paleontologists estimate that it had between 76 and 80 of them. Apatosaurus, formerly known as Brontosaurus, was another giant plant-eater during the late Jurassic. This dinosaur was one of the largest animals that ever lived, growing up to 24 meters long and weighing over 45 tons. Apatosaurus had a very long neck that it used to browse high plants. However, its head was relatively small, which made it different from other sauropods. At first, paleontologists thought that Apatosaurus had a double-layered bony plate along the tops of its ribs. They named this structure Pleurocoeliaci armor, after they discovered it in 1901. Further analysis showed that the armor was actually just a collection of rib fragments that had been cemented together during fossilization. Many people still refer to Apatosaurus as Brontosaurus, even though the two names are technically the same. In 1977, a group of scientists led by paleontologist James A. Jensen conducted a study that showed that Brontosaurus was actually just a young adult Apatosaurus. As a result, they proposed that the two species be combined. However, there has been much debate over this decision, and some people still argue that Brontosaurus should be recognized as a separate species. Another well-known herbivore from the Jurassic was Camarasaurus. This dinosaur was one of the most common sauropods found in the Morrison Formation of western North America. It lived during the late Jurassic, about 150 million years ago. Camarasaurus had a very large body with a long tail and neck. Its skull was relatively small and narrow, which made it different from other sauropods. This dinosaur was also very heavy, weighing over 20 tons, although Camarasaurus was primarily a browser, using its long neck to feed on high plants. Evidence suggests that it may have also been an opportunist, eating lower vegetation when necessary. Like most sauropods, Camarasaurus had a herbivorous dental battery. That is a series of small, closely spaced teeth in the back of its mouth for grinding plants. Unlike other sauropods, however, its teeth were not serrated. Instead, they were smooth and rounded, which would have been useful for crushing tough vegetation. If we go back to the late Triassic, we will find one of the most impressive sauropods of all. Barosaurus was an enormous plant-eater that grew up to 30 meters in length. Like other sauropods, it had a very long neck that it used to browse high plants. However, Barosaurus was unique in that it had extremely long vertebrae. In fact, some of its tail vertebrae were longer than those of any other known sauropod. It's possible that Barosaurus used its long tail to store fat, which would have helped it survive long periods without food. Barosaurus was one of the last sauropods to live during the Triassic, and it may have died out because of the mass extinction at the end of this period. Stegosaurus is another herbivore that needs no introduction. This dinosaur lived during the late Jurassic in what is now North America. It had a distinctive row of plates along its back, which are its most defining characteristic. These plates are thought to have been used for display or thermoregulation, but their exact function is unknown. Stegosaurus was relatively small, growing to a maximum length of about 9 meters. It had a very short tail, which set it apart from other sauropods. Stegosaurus also had a unique dentition, with sharp teeth in the front of its mouth for cutting plants and flat teeth in the back for grinding them. This dinosaur was well adapted to its herbivorous lifestyle and was able to eat a wide variety of vegetation. Kentrosaurus was a smaller relative of Stegosaurus that lived during the late Jurassic in what is now North America. It had a similar body shape to Stegosaurus, but with more spikes along its tail. These spikes were very sharp and could be used for defense against predators. Kentrosaurus was also shorter than Stegosaurus, reaching a maximum length of only 6 meters. It had a very short neck and a long, pointed beak. This dinosaur had sharp teeth in the front of its mouth for cutting plants and grinding teeth in the back for processing them. Kentrosaurus was a herbivore and likely ate low-lying vegetation, such as ferns and Mamenchisaurus was a sauropod that lived during the late Jurassic in what is now China. Like other sauropods, it had a very long neck that it used to reach high plants. However, Mamenchisaurus had one of the longest necks of any dinosaur. In fact, its neck was so long that it made up half of its total body length. Mamenchisaurus was also one of the heaviest dinosaurs that ever lived. It grew up to 27 meters long and weighed over 60 tons. This dinosaur had a relatively small head with sharp teeth in the front for cutting plants and grinding teeth in the back for processing them. Mamenchisaurus was a herbivore and likely ate low-lying vegetation such as ferns and conifers. Most herbivores traveled in herds. This behavior was likely an adaptation to protect themselves against predators. For example, if a lone dinosaur wandered away from the herd, it would be easy prey for a carnivore. However, if it stayed close to its group, it would be much safer. Herds also provided safety in numbers when dealing with large predators. A group of herbivores could easily run away from a carnivore, but a lone dinosaur would have a much harder time doing so. Additionally, being part of a herd allowed herbivores to take advantage of the knowledge and experience of the other members of the group. For example, older, more experienced dinosaurs could lead the herd to the best feeding areas or warn the other members of the group of approaching danger. I hope you enjoyed learning about these incredible dinosaurs. Which one was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next time.